What if, just a few years from now, the vintage car you've spent countless hours restoring, or the cherished family heirloom your grandfather passed down, suddenly became illegal to drive on public roads? It sounds unthinkable, yet that's exactly what a new proposal claims could happen by 2025. The US government, in a move that's shocked classic car enthusiasts across the country, is considering a ban that would effectively push these beloved machines off the streets for good. At first glance, the idea of banning older vehicles might seem like a small footnote in a broader environmental debate. But look closer, and a more complicated story emerges. This controversy isn't just about tailpipe emissions. It's about American identity, multibillion-dollar industries, and a tug-of-war between the past and the future. Strap in, because the road ahead is full of sharp turns, hidden motivations, and one overarching question. Are we about to witness the end of an era, or the start of a revolution? For many lawmakers and environmental groups, the stated purpose of this proposal is straightforward: reduce greenhouse gases and fight climate change. Supporters argue that vintage automobiles built before modern emission standards became the norm pollute the air more intensely than newer, cleaner cars. According to this line of thinking, classic cars, though far fewer in number compared to daily commuter vehicles, represent an unnecessary source of pollution. The worry is that as more states push for zero emission zones, letting older engines roam free undermines the push for a greener future. California, in particular, has been a bellwether, setting aggressive targets for electric vehicle adoption and touting the potential benefits of banning internal combustion engines altogether. Critics, however, see a glaring contradiction. Vintage cars make up a tiny fraction of total vehicles on the road. They're usually driven on weekends or taken to occasional shows, meaning their real-world impact on air quality is negligible at best. Meanwhile, private jets, large commercial ships, and heavy industrial operations contribute exponentially more to carbon emissions than a handful of vintage Mustangs or Corvettes. This mismatch leads to a nagging question. Is this really about saving the planet, or are classic car owners becoming convenient scapegoats for a sweeping regulatory agenda? Then there's the emotional side of the argument. Owning a piece of automotive history often feels like nurturing a piece of living art. Many enthusiasts use their cars sparingly, treating them more like museum exhibits than daily drivers. Yet under the proposed ban, even these limited outings could become illegal or heavily penalized. It's little wonder then that entire communities are pushing back hard, calling the environmental justification a smokescreen for deeper, more controversial motives. Beyond the environmental debate, there's a high-stakes financial drama unfolding. The collector car market isn't just about gleaming chrome and carefully restored upholstery. It's a massive industry worth billions of dollars each year. Restoration shops, parts manufacturers, auction houses, and car shows all feed into a booming ecosystem that supports countless jobs across the country. From small towns that host annual classic car parades to major cities that attract wealthy collectors for upscale auctions, the ripple effect of this culture touches everything from local diners to luxury hotels. In places like Monterey, California, famous for its high-end Car Week events, the influx of automotive tourists pumps millions into the local economy over just a few days. Banning vintage cars would be like yanking out a major pillar supporting these communities. On top of that, you have the individuals who've poured time and money into restoring their dream cars, counting on these investments to hold or grow in value. Auctions can see rare models sell for hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars, and these cars are often considered appreciating assets. If the government effectively outlaws driving them on public roads, the market could crash overnight, leaving many of those investments worthless. Those who make a living repairing and preserving these classics would also find themselves without customers. Many restoration shops are small, family-owned businesses that thrive on specialized skill sets passed down through generations. All of that expertise and entrepreneurship could go down the drain if the vehicles themselves become taboo. For a country that prides itself on innovation and enterprise, it's a bitter pill to swallow. Cars aren't just modes of transportation in America. They've always been symbols of freedom and self-expression. Think about the post-war era, when soldiers returned home craving mobility and adventure. The muscle car boom of the 1960s and 1970s reflected a cultural shift. Young people wanted power, style, and a chance to showcase personal identity through the vehicles they drove. Banning these classics isn't just about cutting carbon emissions or tightening regulations. It's about erasing physical artifacts of American history. Each vintage car tells a story: the era it was built in, the social changes of the time, and the engineering breakthroughs that set the stage for modern automobiles. Shelving them in private museums or forcing them off the road risks turning living history into cold, static exhibits. Communities centered around these cars have built deep social and educational roots. From small-town car clubs that host summer barbecues to after-school programs that teach at-risk youth how to fix an engine, these vehicles bring people together in ways that transcend horsepower. They channel shared passion into mentorship and connection. Lose the cars, and you lose the driving force behind so many communal events, skill-building opportunities, and even local traditions like vintage car parades that celebrate Independence Day or other historic milestones. For many enthusiasts, this isn't a trivial pastime, it's a slice of who they are. The roar of an old V8 engine or the sleek lines of a 1950s cruiser stirs nostalgia, pride, and a sense of identity. A ban would feel like a direct attack on that pride, severing the bond between American heritage and the open road. So, is the push for a 2025 ban all about saving the planet, or is there more lurking beneath the surface? Critics suspect that environmental concerns are just the tip of a larger iceberg. They point to high-profile policymakers and celebrities who routinely fly private jets or sail in massive yachts, generating carbon footprints that dwarf what a weekend cruise in a 1970s Mustang could ever produce. Some argue that focusing on vintage cars is more politically convenient than tackling bigger polluters. After all, it's easier to target a relatively small, disorganized group of hobbyists than to go after billion-dollar industries with powerful lobbyists. Others claim that this crackdown on old ways serves a broader trend of phasing out internal combustion engines altogether, paving the way for an all-electric future, whether everyday Americans are ready or not. Then there's the notion that banning classics might open new markets for automakers seeking to sell expensive electric conversions or entirely new models. If older cars become unviable, drivers may be forced to buy modern replacements, boosting sales for manufacturers quick to jump on the EV bandwagon. Some see this as an orchestrated move, using environmental arguments to push a new economic order. Whether that's fact or conspiracy, the suspicion alone has fueled a passionate grassroots response. You can't take away a cherished pastime without ruffling feathers, and in this case, it sparked a full-on revolt among enthusiasts, business owners, and even some politicians. Car clubs across the nation have organized protests, not just through social media hashtags, but by hitting the road in large caravans that showcase the vibrancy and variety of classic vehicles. Forums and community pages are teeming with calls to action. Members share legal strategies, petition links, and tips for contacting local representatives. Some groups partner with influential organizations like the Specialty Equipment Market Association, SEMA, which has a long history of lobbying to protect automotive freedoms. The message is consistent. These cars are part of our cultural tapestry, and banning them strips away something irreplaceable. Certain lawmakers, too, have stepped in, sensing a wave of discontent among their constituents. While some see the ban as a necessary tool for combating climate change, others, across both conservative and liberal lines, worry that it's an overreach. They argue that if the real goal is to lower emissions, better solutions exist that don't involve crushing the dreams and livelihoods of classic car owners. The media has picked up on the controversy, turning it into a national talking point. Conservative outlets slam the ban as government intrusion on personal freedom, while some progressive voices question whether classic car owners are truly the villains they're made out to be. Polls indicate that a surprising number of people, environmentalists included, don't believe a widespread ban is justified. And this outcry is leading to new conversations about what the future of car culture might look like. Out of this heated debate, a surprising glimmer of hope has emerged. Maybe the future of classic cars doesn't have to be all or nothing. A number of forward-thinking shops and companies have started experimenting with electric conversions, effectively allowing vintage frames to house modern zero-emission powertrains. This approach means an owner can keep the look, feel, and history of a 1960s muscle car while eliminating the guilt and potential illegality of traditional emissions. These conversions aren't cheap. Swapping out an internal combustion engine for electric components can run into the tens of thousands of dollars. But the prospect is compelling enough that a small ecosystem of EV conversion specialists has sprung up in states like California, Washington, and Florida. For owners who can afford it, this path offers a chance to preserve aesthetics and heritage while aligning with emerging environmental regulations. Another buzzword among enthusiasts is synthetic fuels. Companies, notably some high-end automakers, are investing heavily in research to develop carbon-neutral fuels that traditional engines can run on. If this technology becomes commercially viable, classic car owners could drastically cut their vehicle's carbon footprint without sacrificing the rumble of a good old V8 or the mechanical charm of a vintage inline six. Though still in its infancy, synthetic fuel research could offer a middle ground where both the planet and car culture benefit. Pragmatic regulation might also play a role. Instead of an outright ban, policy could encourage owners to upgrade engines or exhaust systems to meet more stringent standards, possibly subsidized by government incentives. This way, the burden of compliance wouldn't solely rest on individual enthusiasts who often have limited means. While not everyone welcomes additional rules, such middle-of-the-road policies could address climate goals without demolishing an entire hobby. These emerging solutions won't solve everything overnight. Electric conversions and synthetic fuels remain pricey, and large-scale adoption requires time, infrastructure, and public awareness. Still, they illustrate that preserving our automotive heritage doesn't have to conflict with environmental responsibility. In fact, this era might spark a new wave of creativity, combining the best of the past with the promise of the future. Car culture is as diverse as the people who participate in it. For many, their love of vintage automobiles is tied to weekends spent rebuilding engines with family, or that first restoration project that brought neighbors together in a makeshift garage workshop. These experiences form bonds that transcend age, background, or political affiliation. You also have local business owners, mom-and-pop diner operators who see their biggest crowds during the local car meets, or bed and breakfast managers whose busiest times coincide with classic car rallies. When enthusiasts gather, they spend money, breathe life into small economies, and often engage in charity fundraisers that benefit the community. Meanwhile, museums and educational programs frequently rely on donated classic cars to teach budding mechanics the fundamentals of automotive engineering. Such hands-on lessons could be lost if these vehicles are phased out. High schools and trade programs might see fewer young people interested in learning about older automotive technology, removing an entire dimension of skill building. These stories reveal what's at stake beyond mere nostalgia. There's an entire constellation of livelihoods, friendships, and educational opportunities bound up in these machines. It's no wonder the thought of a ban feels so deeply personal. For many, it's not just losing a car, it's losing a core part of their lifestyle and community identity. As the backlash grows, state and federal lawmakers find themselves under increased pressure to clarify their stances. In some regions, politicians propose exemptions that would let classic cars operate under specific conditions, like limited annual mileage or mandatory registration as show vehicles. Others support tax breaks or subsidies for those willing to convert older cars to electric power. On the other side, there's a vocal faction insistent that bold environmental steps demand aggressive action. They argue that tackling climate change effectively means sacrificing certain freedoms, and that includes giving up or radically altering gas-guzzling classics. The debate often cuts across party lines, creating unexpected alliances. A progressive urban representative may team up with a conservative rural official if both see value in preserving local car culture. Conversely, a conservative who's worried about job losses in the classic car industry might partner with an environmentalist who believes in synthetic fuels. In this messy overlap, the future of vintage vehicles will be shaped by how effectively these unlikely allies can come together, or how forcefully they split apart. Some grassroots groups have begun endorsing political candidates who promise to defend classic car freedoms. It's an unprecedented move for a community that's generally more focused on chrome than campaigns, yet it underscores how serious and widespread the issue has become. When your passion is threatened, politics suddenly feels very personal. Cable news and online platforms have seized on this battle, turning it into a daily headline. Will your '65 Mustang get outlawed next year? Sensational as that might sound, it grabs viewers and lights up social media comment sections. Conservatives often accuse the government of overreach, while some environmentalists question whether classic cars are truly a major source of pollution. Polls indicate most Americans sympathize with preserving these automobiles, especially when they learn how infrequently they're driven. The average classic car owner only puts a few hundred miles on their vehicle per year, often reserved for sunny days or weekend shows. This fact alone casts doubt on the claim that banning them will have a huge environmental impact. As public sentiment skews toward skepticism over the necessity of an outright ban, lawmakers championing the proposal find themselves defending a stance that seems increasingly extreme to many voters. This shift in public opinion could force policymakers to reconsider, or at least refine, the proposal to account for legitimate concerns about heritage, local economies, and personal freedoms. Car manufacturers, especially giants like Ford and General Motors, owe much of their legendary status to the models that became classics. A 1969 Chevrolet Camaro, or a first-generation Mustang, continues to inspire loyalty and brand recognition that spans decades. These icons don't just enrich collectors, they also indirectly strengthen modern brand images, encouraging today's buyers to stick with American automakers. But as environmental regulations tighten, many manufacturers are keen to pivot. They're pouring money into electric vehicles, advanced battery research, and alternative powertrains. In some ways, preserving older cars might be seen as contrary to the forward momentum they're trying to achieve. Yet wise companies recognize the long-term brand benefits of honoring their legacies. Some have even experimented with producing new, eco-friendly parts for older models or dabbling in their own EV conversion kits. Part suppliers and the aftermarket industry, however, could face catastrophic losses if the ban becomes reality. Everything from high-performance pistons to vintage dashboard replacements could see sales plummet. This sector is huge, and not just in terms of revenue. It's a network of specialized craftsmen, machinists, and entrepreneurs, many of whom are second- or third-generation business owners carrying forward a unique slice of the American dream. Drive through small-town America on a summer weekend, and you'll likely see a row of classic cars parked along Main Street. These events help local businesses generate significant income. Families come out to enjoy the weather, eat at local restaurants, and reminisce over the vehicles that remind them of the good old days. If a ban takes effect, these communities lose a major draw. Tourism dollars vanish, and the ripple effect can force small businesses to shutter. Imagine a rural diner that relies on a monthly car cruise to make rent, or a bed and breakfast that stays afloat thanks to a popular annual classic car festival. Without these gatherings, entire local economies might unravel, leading to job losses and population declines. Moreover, these events often serve charitable causes, from fundraising for local schools to supporting medical research. Classic cars aren't just playthings for the wealthy, they're catalysts for communal goodwill. Removing that catalyst could deal a blow far beyond the realm of car shows, affecting how small towns build unity and take care of their neighbors. One of the most compelling arguments against a ban is that classic cars are rolling museums. They capture the artistry of bygone eras, old-school craftsmanship, design philosophies that shaped entire generations, and the evolution of engineering that eventually led to modern safety features. Seeing these cars in motion brings history to life in a way few static displays can replicate. For older enthusiasts, these machines spark personal memories, a first date, a family road trip, or the pride of a first major purchase. For younger fans, they offer a window into cultural shifts, how tastes in cars reflect changing ideas about style, performance, and technology. Losing the opportunity to see and hear these vehicles on the road is akin to losing a piece of living culture, something intangible yet deeply cherished. This sense of connection to the past is why many are willing to spend thousands on restorations. In each coat of paint or rebuilt engine, a piece of America's story survives. For every onlooker marveling at tail fins or a rumbling big block, the experience becomes a direct link to another era. Eliminating these encounters runs the risk of severing our link to automotive heritage. Despite the gloom of a potential ban, technology might yet ride to the rescue. Electric conversions, already mentioned as a solution, continue to gain traction. Forward-thinking entrepreneurs are improving battery range, creating drop-in motors that fit various chassis, and even developing gearboxes that preserve some semblance of manual shifting feel. It's not the same guttural roar of an internal combustion engine, but it's a compromise many purists are starting to accept. Then there's the potential for carbon neutral or low carbon fuels, which could let classic engines run cleanly. Porsche, for instance, has invested heavily in synthetic e-fuels for its performance and heritage models. If such fuels become widely available and cost competitive, vintage cars might become no more polluting than an electric vehicle powered by a standard electrical grid. With the right incentives, the government could support these innovations rather than resorting to outright bans. A system of tax credits, rebates, or research grants would accelerate solutions that benefit everyone, preserving cultural heritage while meeting stringent environmental goals. This collaboration between enthusiasts, innovators, and policymakers might turn a divisive issue into an opportunity to showcase American ingenuity. Of course, classic cars aren't the only vehicles under scrutiny. Many major cities plan to ban diesel engines, limit congested areas to zero-emission transport, or impose high penalties on polluting vehicles of any age. The push for green solutions is global, and the automotive world is rapidly transforming. Still, some question whether we risk throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The life cycle of a new electric car, mining raw materials for batteries, shipping components worldwide, disposing of old parts, also carries a carbon cost. Meanwhile, a well-maintained classic car typically avoids the environmental impact of building an entirely new vehicle. This nuance often gets lost in black and white arguments about clean versus dirty cars. None of this is to say we shouldn't aim for a greener future. The question is how best to reach that goal without sacrificing the unique legacies that brought us here. A balanced approach might recognize the cultural and educational value of classic cars while incentivizing or mandating cleaner fuels and powertrain upgrades. In doing so, we align heritage with progress, forging a path that respects both the environment and the American love affair with the automobile. Feeling powerless in the face of sweeping proposals? You're not alone, but change starts with collective action. If you're passionate about preserving classic car culture, now is the time to step forward. Joining or supporting advocacy groups, many of which have robust online communities, can amplify your voice. These organizations track legislation, lobby decision makers, and provide resources to help you connect with local representatives. Reaching out to policymakers can be surprisingly effective. A well-written email or a polite phone call, especially when multiplied by thousands of like-minded individuals, sends a clear message. People care about this issue deeply. Emphasizing the economic, cultural, and historical factors shows officials that it's not a niche concern, but a widespread cause with real-life consequences. Educating those around you also makes a big difference. Sometimes friends or family who hear about banning old cars might dismiss the issue until they learn about the jobs, traditions, and personal memories at stake. Sharing stories, whether on social media or in face-to-face conversations, helps bridge the gap between stereotypes and reality. Lastly, for those who want to future-proof their vehicles, explore the innovations out there. Electric conversions, emissions-friendly modifications, or specialized fuels can keep a classic car road legal while aligning with modern standards. Admittedly, these aren't cheap or universally accessible solutions yet, but adopting them early could push the market to develop more affordable options. No matter which side of the debate you're on, the stakes are undeniable. Environmental issues are pressing, and the world is moving toward more sustainable forms of travel. But heritage and history matter too. Classic cars represent a tangible link to our collective past, one that resonates with people from all walks of life. The beauty of American culture has often been its ability to adapt without losing its essence. When faced with past challenges, from industrial revolutions to technological leaps, enthusiasts and entrepreneurs alike found creative solutions. We're at another crossroads. We can try to eradicate everything that doesn't fit a new mold, or we can innovate, compromise, and carry our traditions forward in a more responsible way. Which outcome will prevail depends on the balance we strike between environmental imperatives and cultural values. Will we see a future where vintage cars live on, albeit with some updates or restrictions, or will they fade from public roads, resigned to private collections and fenced-off museums? That question might be decided in the next few years, and everyone, from hardcore gearheads to casual admirers, has a stake in the answer. The proposal to ban vintage cars by 2025 has ignited a national conversation about who we are, where we're going, and what we're willing to preserve along the way. The debate may sound like it's about tailpipes and emissions, but at its heart, it's about a lot more. It's about livelihoods, community traditions, cherished memories, and an American spirit built on the freedom of the open road. If you believe these timeless vehicles deserve a future, now is your moment to speak up. Share this story with fellow enthusiasts and local groups. Write to your representatives and let them know you support balanced policies that protect classic car culture while addressing genuine environmental concerns. Look into emerging technologies like EV swaps or synthetic fuels, and consider ways to keep the wheels turning for generations to come. Above all, stay informed. This issue is bigger than any one person or community, and it's evolving fast. By staying engaged, you not only help safeguard a piece of the past, but also help shape how we move forward. Will vintage cars become relics of history or symbols of a can-do spirit that embraces innovation without discarding its roots? The decision rests with us, and the time to act is now.